Stjepan Orešković, the founder of BOSQAR Invest, and he joins us now. Stjepan, thank you so much for joining us. Talk to us about this bringing together of CEOs and former European commissioners. What is now the single biggest threat when it comes to Europe's growth, and what is holding it back right now?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. That's one of the biggest questions of the economic growth. Why Europe cannot generate the big companies for over 5 decades? Last time Europe created over 100 billion company was 50 years ago. And we all understand from the economic theory and the research that the impact of the huge companies to the overall economy, technological development, innovation, and science is a huge one. So it's not just an idea that we should have a big companies, but when you look into the growth of EU economy from 2009 onwards, comparing this to US, we should understand that in 2009 European GDP was 110% of US, and now we are below 70. And we think that's a lot of that can be attributed to the problem of inability to generate, we say symbolically, $1 trillion company, but definitely big companies that can lead and dominate and innovate at the markets.
So what is fundamentally broken there that Europe doesn't have as many of these trillion euro companies that the US has? Why is it lagging so much when it comes to the US and China now as well? Big competition here. Is this a capital markets problem? Is this a policy failures? Is this too much regulation? Or is it also just a culture, aversion for taking risk in Europe?
I mean, everything what you mentioned is a systemic failure, and there are many others, but these are crucial. Of course, you need the one big unified market, what China and US have. We are talking in Europe about a single market, but we know that there are so many barriers, for example, between the countries that are bigger and higher than between EU and US. But, apart from all these systemic failures, I think there is one crucial problem for Europe, and that is that Europe is putting a cart before the horse. When you read Draghi's report, you will find fantastic analysis mentioning not only what are the problems, but what are the solutions. But the solutions are usually systemic ones. Deregulating, integrating, creating 28 regime, creating saving and investment union, and so on and so forth. But a word entrepreneur was not mentioned a single time in the whole report. And when you look into US and the Chinese model, they are not, of course, equal, right, but they are comparable. What you see is that the entrepreneurs and the scientists are the starting point of the whole mechanism. And in Europe, in a way, middlemen are taking the lead and the role.
So, Stjepan, I've got to get your thoughts, though, on the AI and the tech race. And Europe seems to have lost when it comes to the Gen I race. But when I've talked to experts, what they have said is that physical AI is something that maybe Europe could get the front foot in. So are there any sectors, any industries in Europe where you think that they have the potential to outperform?
I mean, you should always start from your strengths, and you can't create an economy, from the scratch and from nothing. So Europe should look what are the advantages of the existing structure of the economy, but not looking towards future with the idea to replicate it, and even worse, to preserve it. There are some intentions, and that's of course politically natural, that we should use funds that are created for competitiveness actually to save the existing structure of the economy and the companies that are facing problems because of the global competition. I think we should create mechanisms, and that's what we are trying to do, to select based on the transparent and as possible a scientific or professional methodology, to select companies that have a highest potential for growth, and then look how we can stimulate and support that companies, because that's exactly what China and US did in the last 15 years. And so this is a... Yes?
Sorry to jump in here, just for the time, I wanted to make sure I also got your thoughts on the Middle East, because that's something that, of course, is complicating the outlook globally, but particularly for Europe and those countries, regions that are dependent on energy imports. So how much more vulnerable are Europe's supply chains when you compare them to the rest of the world, like the US, like Asia?
I mean, energy is everything. It's a denominator of everything. That's my deepest belief. And the future of the economy will be defined by who can generate the most efficient and the cheapest energy. And I think this what is happening is all happening around the battle for energy. Europe, I think, should really start developing long-term strategy and self-sustainability as much as possible, but also understanding that this couldn't be resolved on the short term. But when you look backwards towards, for example, COVID crisis, you will see that we are simply repeating the same mistakes and addressing the same problems in the same way. So whenever the next crisis comes, we are repeating the same comments on why Europe is so energy dependent to outside sources. But I think that should be a highest priority, even for the types of companies we select as those with highest potential for growth, because those which will have healthy fundamentals related to technology and energy would be also the most competitive in the future. That relates also to the whole story about AI development, data centers and everything. Wherever you look, you will find energy behind.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, Stjepan. So much to talk about. I didn't even get your thoughts on the EU-Australia trade deal, but for next time. Thank you so much, Stjepan Orešković, the founder of BOSQAR Invest.